Coming to you from the mobile Hudson Media Group studio right here in the Uribe compound, this is Talking Politics, and I am the professor, Fernando Uribe. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Now, ladies and gentlemen, certainly right here on this program, I am a broadcast journalist, but by day, I am an academic. And of course, as someone who takes pride in working in higher education, I'm seeing a very alarming trend and one that should concern all of you, whether you're in college or not, whether you're a parent or even a college student. And the fact that free speech is under attack on our college campuses is something that should really make you worry. Because either you believe in free speech altogether or you don't. It's that simple. But what we're seeing, ladies and gentlemen, is a push in academia to discipline and even outright fire those that aren't towing the leftist line that is so prevalent on our college campuses. Now, of course, once upon a time, ladies and gentlemen, academics would debate each other when they disagreed. They would either publish papers or write letters. Oftentimes, seminars or conferences would get very heated amongst everybody in attendance. But normally, people didn't take the disagreements personally. But today in academia, many, even some of my colleagues, demand that people that they don't agree with should indeed be disciplined or outright removed from their position. And I know this because of a story that broke out recently as a result of the protests due to the Black Lives Matter demonstrations taking place all across the country. But specifically, a man that I know personally is a University of Chicago professor, Harold Uhlig, and he learned this lesson the hard way. Now, in a series of tweets, Professor Uhlig questioned the sensibility of Black Lives Matter and specifically their goal of defunding the police. He worried, quote, "Too bad, but hashtag Black Lives Matter, per its core organization at BLK Lives Matter, just torpedoed itself. Instead, he wrote, we need more police. We need to pay them more. We need to train them better." And of course, he went on to say that equating any sort of desire to defund the police is simply being someone who believes that the earth is flat also. Now, in response, prominent Democratic economists such as Paul Krugman, Obama administration chair of the Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen, and even Justin Wolfers at the University of Michigan, and many others called for Uhlig to be fired as editors of the prestigious Journal of Political Economy. Now, a professor that I happen to know personally, the University of Michigan, has sent out some emails that I was actually able to look at. And it read as follows, quote, "It's not just Wolfers. I've received emails from a colleague and doctoral students, both past and current, urging action against Professor Uhlig that just take for granted the disagreement with their position is beyond the pale." Now, although most academic economists are Democrats, ladies and gentlemen, and liberals, to be honest, there are overwhelmingly sort of this idea, they believe also, that law enforcement does indeed deter crime. So the whole field is based on the sort of simple idea that if you make things more costly, people will do less of it. So if you raise the prices of apples, people will buy fewer apples. But it also applies to crime. If you make crime riskier for criminals with higher arrest rates or longer prison sentences, guess what? People ultimately should be committing less crime. But instead of trying to understand why economists think the way they do, many on the left just shout racism. And of course, what a surprise, because as we all know, liberalism tends to be a very intellectually bankrupted ideology. When if you don't like something or if you don't agree with something, why not just call someone a racist or a sexist or a homophobe or a transphobe? That seems to be the blueprint of the left for many, many years, not just in pop culture, but in the liberal media, but more so on our college campuses. Now, recently, a New York Times reporter tweeted out the following, quote, "Economics is overwhelmingly white and has a reputation for being dismissive, if not openly hostile, to Black economists." Now, economists have estimated that changes in arrest rates account for about 16 to 18% in the variations between murder rates between places, and the conviction rates explain another 12%. Now, the death penalty ultimately is also a deterrent to committing murder and explains an estimated 12% of the variation in murders. So if you want to get rid of the police, there will mean no arrests, no convictions, no prisons, and no death penalty. Now this change, of course, would be far outside anything the U.S. has ever done and what they've experienced in our own criminal justice system. But it may very well cause an 80% or more increase in murder rates. Now, economists have also found that the benefits of policing are greatest in those areas where crime rates are the highest, namely poor Black urban areas. Now, these neighborhoods would stand to lose the most by defunding the police. And this is something, ladies and gentlemen, that I really take issue with Black Lives Matter. Of course, we have different chapters around the country that have very different platforms and, of course, very different rhetoric. But something you're hearing consistently throughout the Black Lives Matter movement is about defunding the police. Of course, as we all know, it's a poor choice of words. If you want to say reallocating resources or redistributing resources, that's a little easier to swallow. But when you're talking about defunding the police, folks, it's cold and calculated, and it's done with a purpose. And so don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Now, of course, before you jump down my throat and accuse me of being a racist or a bigot because it sounds like I'm not supporting Black Lives Matter, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that many within the movement itself are indeed intellectually bankrupt. Because we know that if you start defunding the police and start reducing the amount of police personnel in major urban areas of this country, folks, we are going to see crime go up. We're going to see murders go up. We're going to see assaults go up. We're going to see aggravated assaults go up. We're going to see sexual assaults go up. Is that what we want in a society? Of course not. And I think many people are losing sight of it. While it's important folks, it's important to advocate for racial justice and equity in our criminal justice system. No one would tell you otherwise. As someone who worked in our criminal justice system for 10 years before entering academia, I know firsthand about what goes on in our jails at the local and county level. But ladies and gentlemen, the idea of defunding the police and even suggesting that it's an asinine idea, which it is, and then to be accused of being a racist, and if you're going to be threatened with your job, that's not free speech. And that's why I'm here to tell you that free speech is under attack on our college campuses. I hear it all the time from colleagues that, let's be honest, it's not hard to Google me. It's not hard to look up what I'm doing with my media projects, whether it's this show with the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air, whether it's Talk on the Hudson on Blog Talk Radio, whether it's Politically Direct with Insider NJ, or Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Eyes on NJ. So it's certainly not difficult to find out where I stand along the ideological spectrum. But the idea, ladies and gentlemen, that my speech should be censored or I should be silenced is wrong. And this is what's happening on a lot of our college campuses. Believe me when I tell you, I'm not very popular among my colleagues, but I don't care. You know, I'm fearless, but I'm also original because I stand up for what I believe in. Now, again, I'm not saying anything inflammatory or bombastic or derogatory. What I'm simply telling is the truth. I do it every week on this show, as well as my other media platforms. But the idea that a professor like Dr. Ulig in Chicago should be ostracized or even threatened with his job is downright wrong. What don't liberals see about that? Again, it's this cancel culture that's been perpetuated by liberals, okay? No one else is doing this, okay? They've been complicit in creating a toxic atmosphere, not just on our college campuses, but in our media and also pop culture. It has to stop, okay? Professor Ulig in Chicago didn't say anything inappropriate. He didn't say anything inflammatory. He didn't say anything racist or bigoted. He simply told the truth. And for some reason, telling the truth gets you labeled. I know this firsthand from people that listen to my podcast and watch this show in addition to my other studio show. But one thing I will not take lying down, folks, is the accusations of being a racist, a bigot, or any other sort of name you want to put on me. I'm none of those things, and you know that by watching this program. But some on the left and many liberals in this country will tell you otherwise. And it's these liberals that have infested academia. I feel very sorry for my colleagues because you know what? In an arena where we should be able to exchange our ideas openly and honestly, now we're under attack. It's almost like we're almost afraid to speak out. I'm not afraid to speak out, but I'll definitely keep speaking out for you because, folks, free speech is something we can never silence, whether it's in academia, whether it's in media, whether it's in social media, or whether it's in everyday life. The sooner we go away from free speech, the sooner we lose our country. That's not something I'm a fan of. And if you are, you need to look in the mirror because it's just simply very un-American. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. In the latest edition of the 3-time award-winning podcast, Talk on the Hudson, which you can listen to live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talk on the Hudson, was the distinguished New Jersey State Senator from the 31st Legislative District, Sandra Cunningham. Now, we spoke for almost an hour on the podcast on a variety of different issues, and here are some highlights for your consideration. First and foremost, we talked about a bill she introduced on the floor of the state Senate earlier this spring to help bring some welcome relief to parents and specifically college students who felt the crunch at the onset of COVID-19 and how that ultimately altered their spring semester. Let's check out what the senator had to say.
When I saw that news clipping of you introducing a bill in Trenton about getting some relief for students this year, this past spring semester, I have to tell you, I applauded that. And I gave you serious props on my show. I said, wow, because a lot of students, even pre-COVID, were struggling to pay their bills, in the
Sure.
academic year, it got even more difficult with COVID, Senator.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
No,
Well, that was one of the bills. Yeah, I think you do this enough. You sometimes have your favorite bills or something that you're particularly proud of to having played a role in, and this is certainly one that will stay with me as well.
And I have to say that being that assertive and being that proactive and being a voice for students, Senator, I think was so admirable, because we know that thousands of college students this past spring semester, never mind the fall, we'll get to that in a moment, but this spring semester was so difficult for college students all around the state because of virtual learning, the fact that, hey, their parents had to pay their term bills, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to go to school. And guess what?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of parents, I think, are up in arms about the fact that, hey, my kid is home. Maybe virtual learning is not the best environment for him or her to learn from. And I can tell you that from experience, because, never mind them. Imagine me having to teach a class online, all my classes, and that was difficult. And I think a lot of parents were hoping for some relief. And I think the feedback must have been great for you, Senator, from people that reached out to you about this.
Yes, they did. Yes, it was. I'm chair of higher education for the Senate, so part of what I try to do is to develop relationships with students and certainly with the staff at most of the most of the colleges here in New Jersey, to keep in touch with what the kids are doing and how they're doing and how we can continue to make higher education in New Jersey one of the best places to be in this country. In a situation like this is something we totally know nothing about, because no one on this planet has ever had this experience before. But when you're exposed to something that you really don't know, no one knows the protocol on it, it serves two purposes. One, it gives you an opportunity to be as creative as you can possibly be to help.
Secondly, we address sort of the problems that the unemployment benefit system is having here in New Jersey, and ultimately some of the responsibility that falls on Trenton, and more so the legislature, to try to get some answers during this COVID pandemic, and how thousands of New Jerseyans are still waiting for their unemployment benefits to kick in via direct deposit. Let's hear what the senator had to say about it.
Again, I'm not sure how much you were inundated with phone calls or voicemails. I don't know how much Millie had to deal with at the district office, but this was a frustrating thing when it comes to how many months it seemed that the state wasn't getting their act together. Well, more so Trenton, or maybe more so the Department of Labor, because it seems like this is a problem that precedes the governor. I think it's been a problem with the antiquated database in Trenton when it comes to, UI, unemployment insurance and benefits. It just seems that a lot of New Jerseyans were struggling. It took this long to address it. What was the feedback in your district from your constituents about having to wait as long as they've had to wait for their unemployment? So there's still some people that still haven't gotten them.
Yeah, it has been unbelievable. One day it looks like it's getting better, and the next day it's pulled down again. It has been a really long and unfair process. We have had people, I have one person on my staff who is totally responsible for dealing with unemployment, and that's Larry Eccleston. He makes sure that everything that is done from our office, he tries to really be an advocate for everyone that calls in or comes in the office, trying to motivate them and help people to keep their positivity in line, because it's a difficult process and it's so unfair. You have people who haven't been able to work or whatever reason, and they need their money, quite honestly. They just need their money. And it's been difficult. It's been a process. It's not an easy process at all. So our office, I think every legislative office probably has some horror stories about what's happened to people coming into the office about this. But we do have one person assigned just to this. this is all you work on. Let's get all of this done in as much and as quickly as possible.
Lastly, we discussed the difficult job that police officers have been put under in recent weeks due to protests as a result of the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, and more so the impact it's having on policing currently in our political climate. Let's hear what the senator had to say about this.
Oh, listen, the pursuit for equity, not just in our criminal justice system, but in general in society, is a noble one, and it's a just one. So I'm with you on that, Senator. We know that obviously in the news cycle, we've seen that at the federal level, the Department of Justice, and also out of the Office of the President, issuing executive orders about reforming police practices. We know that at the state level, there are municipalities locally, even Hoboken. I know Mayor Fulop, I believe, is also looking to improve upon those police tactics and practices in Jersey City. You know, what's been the feedback maybe you've heard out of Trenton about how assertive the state of New Jersey has to be, whether it's the Department of Law and Public Safety under the Attorney General, Grabir Gulwal? Have you heard any feedback thus far in the last 48 hours since that executive order at the federal level has been handed down? Is there a lot of chatter in Trenton about, hey, let's really get on municipalities in New Jersey to make sure that at the federal level, these police practices are being addressed? But you know what? Let's delve into them further. Let's really, really dissect this more and really address it much deeper. Has there been any chatter about that in Trenton, Senator?
Well, you know, I think that there is always chatter when something like this happens. We have not really been in Trenton, so I haven't heard a lot of chatter in Trenton, but I do imagine that the Attorney General is taking whatever steps that he can to deal with these issues. And they have to be dealt with. I mean, no one has a way out of this. This is it. There's not going to be any way out. Everybody is going to have to step it up and to do what they're supposed to do. You know, we need to look at law enforcement. We need to look at the way it's been handled and then the way that it's dealt with every single day. You know, my husband started out as a street police officer and moved up to captain, became the first African-American U.S. Marshal in New Jersey. He has been proud to have served not only in the United States Marines, but he was proud to be a Jersey City police officer. There are wonderful police people out there. There are wonderful people who do their job and do it well and are not trying to hurt anyone. Unfortunately, there are other people who are, and it is the other people that we have to deal with, and tough decisions have to be made. And this is the time to make it. There is not going to be any other time better than this time to make those decisions to protect our residents. And there's just no two ways about it. It has to be done, and it has to be now, and they need to be bold.
Certainly, it was a very informative episode for nearly an hour, and you can listen to it in its entirety by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking to Hudson from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. I'll continue bringing these exclusives throughout 2020 because I get them live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. with a 3-time award-winning podcast, Talking to Hudson. And now to some local stories for your consideration. Let's start off in Union City. Before I begin, I want to extend on behalf of my entire family my prayers and wishes for a speedy recovery for my mayor and state senator, Brian Stack. Due to a recent accident at City Hall, we're hoping that you're resting comfortably at home and you'll be back to work and on your feet in no time. And of course, a special thank you to John Highness with the Hudson County View for their report on this story. Now, shortly before his accident, Union City Mayor and State Senator Brian Stack introduced a bill on the floor of the State Senate to prohibit landlords from evicting tenants during this COVID pandemic. Now, here's some facts just to give you a bit of context of what's going on right now. Now, the New Jersey State Senate cleared a bill that again was introduced by State Senator Brian Stack out of the 33rd Legislative District that will allow municipalities to pass regulations to prohibit evictions during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, according to his office, through a statement, State Senator Stack said the following, quote, "One of the biggest lessons we've learned during the Great Recession was the need to prevent mass homelessness in this state. New Jersey families that have been unable to afford rent during COVID-19 and the pandemic itself do not deserve to be evicted and thrown out onto the streets. This is just a totally inhumane act during these trying times. Not only is it important we prevent people from becoming homeless, we also need people to stay inside so we can eventually beat the pandemic. Now, a municipality may temporarily ban evictions due to late rent payments during the declared public health emergency issued by Governor Phil Murphy in March in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, as we all know, on March 19th, the governor signed an Executive Order 106 specifically, which halts foreclosures and evictions for the duration of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, the ban would end after the public health emergency is declared over. However, though, landlords will still be able to recover unpaid rent by filing an action with a county superior court. Now, the bill labeled S-2485 was released from the Senate by a vote of 31-0. Now, Mayor Brian Stack, and also in his capacity as a state senator, is engaged in a court battle with the Union City Housing Initiative, which is a group of property owners seeking to overturn the city's local rent hike and eviction freezes. Now, of course, we know that an attorney last week for the UCHI argued that this bill would allow Brian Stack to rewrite state law to retroactively give the aforementioned Union City ordinances legal standing. Well, first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, let me give a shout out and I have to just serious applause to Union City Mayor Brian Stack, and of course, in his capacity as a state senator, to look out for his constituents. Because right now, during COVID-19, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people in New Jersey, not just in Union City and Hudson County, but throughout New Jersey, are facing difficult times. And specifically here in the 33rd Legislative District, which comprises Weehawken, Hoboken, and Union City, let me tell you something, there's a large population of renters here from all ethnicities and all backgrounds. And of course, you know what? One of the reasons that State Senator Stack is so popular with his constituents is because he sticks up for them, regardless of their background, their socioeconomic status, or any other variable. And of course, what we're seeing right now during this pandemic are very difficult economic decisions being made by households. Not everyone's able to pay rent. And of course, thousands of residents here don't want to abscond on their responsibility and of course the leases that they signed. But first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, as the state is slowly transitioning to a reopening, as we're just only entering phase 2 right now in mid to late June, people still are not back to work. Unemployment benefits are still not being paid. And even during this chaos, renters all throughout the area are feeling that crunch. So you know what? Mad props to State Senator Stack for sticking up for his constituents. And I understand that property owners and landlords want their money. I understand that. And I certainly would not begrudge them for wanting to make sure that their tenants live up to their responsibilities as signed in their leases. But right now, folks, these are extraordinary circumstances. And this is a very unique time, not only in Hudson County, but not just throughout New Jersey, but for the rest of the country itself. And while we're living in these very extraordinary times, often we have to take some extraordinary measures. That's what State Senator Stack is doing, and he's doing it for the betterment of his constituents. Why people won't see that, or specifically these property owners, is beyond me. But I'll keep you posted in the weeks and months ahead about what happens with this bill not only moving through the state Senate, eventually reaching the desk of Governor Murphy, but more so what the UCHI might be doing in sort of illegal counteraction in the near future. And now moving on to Jersey City, and a great story by Marilyn Baer with the Hudson Reporter. And certainly it's great to see that the Jersey City Police Department will indeed be undergoing de-escalation training. Now, again, let me give you some factors here from the recent story. From rookies up to the police chief, all Jersey City police officers will undergo de-escalation training over the next 8 months, according to a June 18th announcement by the Office of Mayor Stephen Fulop and Public Safety Director James Shea. Now, in addition to that, the training is the administration's latest step to improve the city's policing policies and procedures, which it says will allow officers to better manage crisis encounters for the betterment and safety of residents, as well as for Jersey City Police Department officers and those they encounter in stressful and challenging situations. And the mayor's office released a statement this week saying, quote, "The program will retrain officers to confidently and competently make the best decisions to ensure more positive outcomes when placed in life-threatening situations." Now, certainly this comes after the murder of George Floyd, a black man who died at the hands of a brutal Minneapolis police officer late last month, and obviously who knelt on his neck and back for nearly 9.5 minutes, which acted as a catalyst for protests that we've seen, not just throughout New Jersey, but the rest of the country. Now, after several peaceful protests in Jersey City, the mayor signed the mayor's pledge through the Obama Foundation, announcing changes to the police department's use of force guidelines. And the council created a committee to review police policies and procedures, which will report its findings in just 9 months. Now, according to the city, the $1 million training itself will be paid through funds recently received from the COVID-19 testing refunds themselves. Now, the program will expand tactical awareness and communications training, which are currently implemented in the JCPD's emergency service and counterterrorism units, to all uniformed members of the department, and it will ultimately be mandatory. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is certainly something that I applaud, and without a doubt, kudos to Mayor Fulop and Director Shea, respectively, for taking the initiative on this. Now, when it comes to sort of the perception of the police, ladies and gentlemen, whether it's in Hudson County's largest city, whether it's throughout New Jersey, or even throughout the rest of the country, we get it. The police don't always have sort of a positive perception from the citizenry, and I understand that. There's some bad apples in every profession, but by and large, police officers and the men and women who serve in these departments are good people. They're doing a really stressful job, folks. And if there's anything we've learned in recent weeks, especially during these protests, and the ones that have not always been peaceful, but the ones that have turned into downright riots and looting, police officers have been put in a very difficult situation. And while I want police officers to protect themselves and protect citizens, they also have to act accordingly, and they have to make sure that they're not above the law. So if any of this training can help ensure that officers are not overstepping their bounds, I'm all for that. But to sort of demonize the police, like what we've been seeing in recent weeks, ladies and gentlemen, is just downright wrong. And I've talked about it on this program previously, whether it's having police officers on my podcast, or talking about police practices overall, or even sort of the insane idea of trying to defund the police. When I see Hudson County's largest city and Hudson County's largest police department going to this extent of providing training and making sure that their officers are trained properly and making sure that they can ultimately de-escalate any tense or hostile situation that they come across, you know what? That itself, ladies and gentlemen, is very good use of our taxpayer dollars. I'll keep you posted in the weeks and months ahead, as this story, I'm sure, will no doubt be in our radars, and certainly will be one we'll have to keep an eye on as 2020 proceeds. And that's our show for this week. To check out all the excellent programming brought to you by the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air, please go to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com, www.livestream.com/HMGTV, and www.njonair.com. Don't forget to like the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air on Facebook and follow them both on Instagram and Twitter. And live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m., you can check out the 3-time award-winning podcast, Talk on the Hudson, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talk on the Hudson. And never forget, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always talking politics right here with the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air. I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.